Have you ever met a child who seemed too wise for their years? A child who spoke about things they couldn't possibly know, names, places, even deaths from long ago? Tonight, we'll step into one of the most chilling and well documented cases of past life memory ever recorded. The story of James Leininger, a little boy who believed he had lived and died as a World War II fighter pilot. Welcome back to Lisa's Haunted Cottage. Grab your tea or coffee, light a candle, and settle in because tonight we're exploring what might be one of the most compelling cases of reincarnation ever told. It all began when James was just 2 years old. His parents, Bruce and Andrea Leininger, started noticing something strange. James would wake up screaming night after night, describing vivid scenes of a plane crash. He'd cry out, "Airplane crash! Plane on fire! Little man can't get out!"
Monday, May 1st, 2000. The screams came out of nowhere. One day, James Leininger, just 3 weeks past his second birthday, was a happy, playful toddler, the centerpiece of a loving family of three living on the soft coastal plain of southern Louisiana. And then suddenly, in the darkest hour of midnight, he was flopping around on his bed like a broken power line, howling at the sky as if he could crack open the heavens with his ear-shattering distress.
These are samples of the recurring drawings that James did every day for a year and a half or 2 years. It was just like the nightmares. It just goes on and on.
I was always looking for a logical explanation for James's nightmares and his knowledge of aviation. And many people have asked us, do we have an aviation or military background? And we don't. And that's what made James's recollections so much more uncanny, that he had this basic knowledge of military and aviation where there was no way he could be getting this information.
He'd cry out, "Airplane crash! Plane on fire! Little man can't get out!" At first, his parents thought it was just a nightmare, something he must have picked up from a cartoon or movie. But James was obsessed with planes, particularly World War II fighter planes. He could name their parts, propellers, drop tanks, even the exact type of aircraft. And remember, he was only 2. When they asked him who the little man was, James calmly said, "Me. The little man can't get out." James began sharing names, people, and places his parents had never mentioned. He said his plane had taken off from a ship called Natoma. He talked about a man named Jack Larson. Bruce, James's father, decided to look into it and discovered that during World War II, there really had been a carrier called the USS Natoma Bay. And among its crew was a pilot named James Houston Jr., a man who had been killed in action when his plane was shot down over the Pacific. The details were uncanny. The type of plane, the location of the crash, even the way the engine failed, all matching perfectly to the historical record. The Leiningers couldn't ignore it anymore. They reached out to veterans who had served on the Natoma Bay, and every new conversation seemed to confirm what James had said. He even recognized other pilots by name, describing moments from missions he couldn't possibly know. Eventually, the family visited an air museum, and when James saw a World War II plane on display, He ran toward it shouting, "That's my plane! That's where the bombs go!" He was pointing out mechanical details most adults wouldn't know. The museum staff that were there were speechless. Years later, James's parents connected with Anne Houston Barron, the sister of the fallen pilot, James Houston Jr. When young James met her, he spoke to her like someone who he'd known for all of his life. He even recalled private family memories, things that had never been published anywhere. Anne reportedly believed him. She said it felt like her brother had come home.
His parents cautiously made contact with James Houston's only surviving relative, his sister, Anne. At first, she didn't know what to think about the little boy who claimed to be her brother, reincarnated. But then, James asked her for a painting that only one person other than her knew existed.
She sent this January 16th, 2006. Says, "Dear James, I do hope that this is the picture you asked for. It is the only one of me done by my mother. I am sorry to be so long sending it to you. These past few weeks have been very busy and hectic. I hope you like it. With my love, Annie."
James believed then, as he does now, that it was the dead pilot's soul asking for that picture.
I had asked her for a painting that my past mother had done for her and me. This was in her attic for 50 or so years. My parents and she thought it was crazy that I would know about something like this.
Anne, too, became a believer. And there were other, more chilling connections. James had 3 G.I. Joes he named Billy, Walter, and Leon, names his parents thought were strange for a boy to choose.
Bruce is like, "Hey, James, what are you going to name your G.I. Joe?" And he's just playing. He goes, "Walter." And so we were like, "Walter?" Bruce goes, "How come you named your G.I. Joes Billy, Walter, and Leon?" And he goes, "Because that's who met me when I got to heaven."
Of course, not everyone believes stories like this. Skeptics argue that children can pick up small details from books, overheard conversations, or even subconscious cues from adults. Some believe it's simply coincidence or the power of suggestion, that the mind is capable of stitching together memories that feel real. But even some researchers, like Dr. Jim Tucker at the University of Virginia, have studied James's case closely. He calls it one of the most convincing examples of past life memory ever recorded. In many reincarnation studies, children like James share something called soul carryovers, traces of memory, personality, or fears that seem to linger from a past life. Some develop phobias that match how they supposedly died. Others speak languages they've never learned or recognize places they've never been. And while science doesn't have a clear answer, these stories continue to raise questions about what really happens when we die, and whether our consciousness is far more enduring than our bodies. Some believe cases like James's are proof that our souls are far older than our bodies, that memories, love, even fear can cross the line between lives. Others think that there's a simpler explanation: coincidence, suggestion, or imagination. Maybe children are just more open to things we've learned to tune out as adults. But if the soul truly does carry echoes of who we once were, it makes you wonder, how many of us are still walking through life with memories we just can't quite reach? So now I want to take a minute to insert my thoughts a little bit on this, you know, every time I talk about stories like this, um, and this story in particular, I've known about for many, many years. It's pretty well publicized. I will share the links down below in the description box. Make sure you check out any video I have linked, that type of thing, because it really is a fascinating story. A few thoughts I want to share about this case in particular, is that James was only 2 when these things started. He was having nightmares. Now, nightmares can be common in children, but his was a reoccurring nightmare. It was the same thing over and over about when the actual airplane crash took place. Okay. The other thing that's fascinating to me is the amount of details that James remembered, about airplanes, about certain people, the men who he was serving with, as James Houston. Details about the Houston family that, nobody would know, let alone a 2-year-old. Um, the other thing that's uncanny to me with most reincarnation cases is the uncanny resemblance that they can have to the person in the other life that they are referring to. So in this case, if you look at comparison between James, little James, and James Houston, even both as children, it's uncanny. And that's something that fascinates me. I personally do believe in reincarnation. I know of a few past lives that I've had myself. I'm not going to share that now. But um the details are one thing about the past life and remembering. I do believe that memories can carry over from one life to another, and I believe that in some of the cases, like with James Leininger, that those memories can be stronger for some people when they come into the next life, and those carryover memories get mixed up with your current life, and it's, can be very confusing. The fascinating part to me is just how much the person can look like who they were in a past life. Okay. So make sure also check out any pictures that I have with this. Again, I'll put links down below. But I just wanted to touch on a few of those points that I find extremely interesting when it comes to reincarnations, especially this one in particular. I was very young when it started. And when you're young, you're walking around kind of closer to spirit, meaning, you haven't been, I don't want to say tainted, probably the wrong word. You haven't been introduced to anything by society. People aren't saying to you, oh, that's not real, that type of thing. It can happen if a child is saying they have an imaginary friend, that's actually a spirit, and maybe parents are telling that's just your imagination. Um, so it's children are closer to the spirit world because of that. They live in the moment, and that's the other thing that's fascinating to me. Children and animals as well live in the moment. So they don't have experience to go from even at that young age. They're just living in the moment and telling what they're seeing and feeling and hearing, experiencing. So usually when it's a case of a child in reincarnation at a young age, I'm going to believe what they say. So those are just a few of my thoughts. So thank you for spending your evening with me here at Lisa's Haunted Cottage. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts below. I always love reading your theories. And as always, keep those candles burning and the curiosity alive.